Hello, everyone. A very good morning to everyone here. Welcome to Never on the Back Foot. We are in part two of our preview series ahead of the World Cup. We are looking at a lot of aspects of the teams ahead of this World Cup, and who better than Bharat, Naman, and Rishabh to join us for this discussion. They're not just cricket fans, but a really important part of our Never on the Back Foot community, and I'm really glad that they're here. On today's episode, we will be looking at South Africa, New Zealand, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, and the Netherlands. So, we have quite an exciting discussion lined up today. And for viewers joining in now, you can put in your comments in the live chat and we will definitely address all of them. So, with that said, let's get started. Now we have South Africa, right? They are often synonymous with the chokers tag, unfortunately, because just have a look at their performances in the World Cup, right? Their best chances of winning the World Cup came in 1999, 2011, 2015, when they reached the knockouts and played, some iconic games, but that did result in their, heartbreak as well. So, to start off the discussion, Naman, how would you assess South Africa's recent performances in the lead up to this World Cup?
Rightly mentioned, yeah, they have had their best chances over the past couple of decades, and the 2015 squad, in my opinion, was probably one among the best. They had all these experienced guys like Hashim Amla, right till the younger ones like Quinton de Kock, and even then, like the fact that Daleson couldn't defend those 12 runs in the final over, it was really heartbreaking for them. I was rooting for New Zealand that at that time. I'm guilty of that, but later on you get to realize that okay, that was the chance for AB de Villiers to lift the World Cup. So it does pinch you now. And having said that, the 8 years that have followed that World Cup in across the formats, the team has gone through a lot of ups and downs. Like we've seen a few controversies coming up, like with Quinton de Kock not agreeing to take the knee and all these incidents. But over the past 2 years or so, I think they have assembled a unit. They have been through that transition phase, and now they are at a place where the players have found their own spots. Like we remember Markram, towards the beginning he was opening, but now he has found a place in the middle order, and he's been doing that quite well, and he's been among the best in that position all across. So they have assembled a good unit. They have like Bavuma is also finally beginning to give the returns that they have invested in him for. This year he has been cracking for me. He's averaging, I think, around 60 or 70 across ODIs in this year. And their middle order is also starting to fire. David Miller has been around. They have stuck with him, and he's also now finally coming back to the vintage Miller that we've known. And Andre Klassen, of course, the way he has just. I remember back in 2018 when India went there and he took on the Kulchap spin twins. Ever since then, like he somehow just went off the radar, even for South Africa or for franchise teams all over the globe. But for the past couple of years, the way he has come back, he has performed in leagues across, and even for South Africa, I think it makes their batting order one of the most lethal ones when it comes to the power hitting at the death, with likes of Klassen and Miller, and then you've got Jansen at seven, who I think he should be starting at seven because we've seen what he can do with the bat, and then you've got Maharaj at eight, who's always handy with the bat. So they have a very good unit. I'm quite bullish on them this time around, but that to happen, the like Rassi wanted us, and they've brought him in, they've kept him out, they brought in him, kept him out. I think he has been slightly inconsistent feature in the 11. So let's see how he goes along moving ahead. Other than that, I think their 11 mostly picks itself. It's just they have to decide which bowler they bring in. The like most it's like De Kock, Bavuma, you've got VDD, Markram, then Klassen, Miller, Jansen, Maharaj, Shamsi, Rabada. Then I'm really looking forward to see Gerard Coetzee on Indian surfaces. I saw a couple of games of the Australian ODI series there, and man, that guy has some pace. He has some quality in him. I remember him bowling like rattling the stumps of Marnus, if I'm right. So it was it was very like I don't have words to express that. I wasn't expecting that from a name that I hadn't heard of a lot. I'm looking forward to seeing if he makes it to the 11 because he can be that enforcer in the middle. And yeah, bullish on South Africa's chances there.
Exactly, and considering the lead up they've had, coming to this World Cup with that series win against Australia, I think they must be, very confident of their chances. So, Bharat, how would you look at that confidence coming into this World Cup, and will they be able to get that playing 11 right in these Indian conditions?
I think they have a bunch of players who have the experience of playing in India. I think even though Markram didn't have a great time captaining Sunrisers last time, but with Dickok, with Markram, with Klaassen, especially Miller, so they have a bunch of people who have played in India. The last IPL season would have been a great lesson because they played on those pitches in Lucknow and stuff, where they got to experience completely non-batting friendly conditions. So they have the squad to play. The question is how well does the team come together? I think because with Quinton de Kock saying that this is his final bow in if I'm not wrong. He's retiring after this, if not, yeah. And so the squad has some new players, some players who are going to go out. So how does that mix come in? I think their spin bowling is also quite decent with Shamsi and Keshav Maharaj. They're two quality spinners. The confidence from the Australia series will be immense because to go 2-0 down in that fashion and then to come back and win a series is a great achievement. So I think, as Naman said, I am pretty bullish on how South Africa are going to do at this World Cup, but it will also depend on how confident is Temba Bavuma. That will be a question. How does his batting form hold up? Because he scored that brilliant century in the first ODI against Australia. I remember where everyone else struggled and he's the only one. I think he scored 120 odd. So how I think this is a question a lot of teams surprisingly are going to face in this tournament is how confident are their captains, what kind of form are they in, because that will cascade on a little bit onto the other players as well. So those are some questions, but I am South Africa's middle order man with Klaassen, Miller. They can finish games. They can take the total to those 350s, 400. So I'm super excited to see how they go about it this time. And a special mention, as Aman said, to Marco Jansen, because his left arm, tall, hit the deck bowler. I think he'll be a problem for all the teams, but especially for a specific team that all of us support, I suppose. Yeah.
That's
Have you
true.
guys
And
heard
here's
about
hoping. Go ahead, Naman. Yeah.
Afghanistan, right? We all support Afghanistan.
Yes. That's the team, guys.
Yes.
Sure, and now obviously, we have seen a lot of these South African players apply their trade in the IPL as well. So, Rishabh, who are some of the players you're absolutely looking forward to, seeing in these conditions, playing for South Africa? Big moment.
I mean, I think what Bharat just mentioned, Marco Jansen, he's a favorite of mine. I mean, the guy, super tall guy who's who's really good with the ball and just as handy with the bat. He can take a four for a five for on a given day. He can also score a quick fire half century and just he is someone who he is what we call. I mean, I know it's because it's an IPL top kind of thing, an impact player, someone who can make a mark at any given point of time. He will be a trump card for South Africa, I believe, and he's someone I'm definitely looking forward to. Another one is the spin duo of Keshav Maharaj and Tabrez Shamsi. They, I think Keshav Maharaj just recently came out of injury, so that would be a boost for South Africa as well, because these two have shown to not only stifle runs but take wickets at key moments. So I think, given that South Africa's pace attack is not as stacked, I mean they're missing Andrej Nortje, which is a big, which is big. I mean, given how good he has been in India and just he's been, I would say, almost the one who spearheads South Africa's bowling attack. So his absence is major. So in that regard, South Africa's spin attack needs to be important. And of course, as Naman and Bharat mentioned, their batting is immense. It's the likes of Markram and Miller and Quinton de Kock and Demba Bavuma, who have immense experience in India. They've done well here. And then of course the recent series against Australia where they came back from 2-0 down. This is a team that will be high on confidence, and when teams are in that kind of momentum, if they can bring it to this World Cup, I won't be surprised if they make top four actually.
Absolutely. This time, it looks like they've really gotten all their departments in place and they're looking like a very formidable team on paper. This question is open to everyone in the room. So, any match that you're particularly looking forward to? Let's start with Naman.
Well, just taking a look at the schedule as well, so that we have it. I think they're playing Australia or England at Wankhede. Yeah, England at Wankhede, right? So that's the one I'm looking forward to, because that's those are really good conditions for both the teams, for the pace attack to come in, for the batting unit to kick in. I'm looking forward to that clash as far as South Africa is concerned.
Bharat?
Yeah, I'm with Naman on this one. South Africa versus England, because England's bowling attack, while it's good, it's a little like they have the tendency to concede sometimes, and we don't know how the form of some of the players. So it's going to be fun to watch South Africa, especially South Africa's middle order at Wankhede against that England bowling attack. So yeah, that'll be box office.
Right. And Rishabh, what's the match that you're looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to the recap between South Africa and Australia. It's happening in Lucknow, first of all, so that will be a very new experience for both teams. And then so it will have an impact on both their starting lineups, and I think given that I guess Australia might be feeling a tad bit hurt after just going 2-0 up, then losing the series. So they might want to exact some revenge in that regard, and then of course. So that whole narrative will be there. So yeah, that's I would like to see these two once again.
And another very interesting pointer is about how many people feel that although the top three is sealed with India, England, and Australia, the fourth spot is going to somewhere come between South Africa and New Zealand. So, again, the question is open to everyone here. Who do you think is going to make that final cut? Just your prediction on that, Naman.
Neha, you just forgot Pakistan. Yeah, I mean, they have a great chance there. And well, honestly, although at the moment it seems like India, Australia, and England are firm favorites to make it to the top three, and then the rest, like between Pakistan, New Zealand, and South Africa, are the ones. I feel they can really give these three a run for their money as well if they really uh, hit their stripes well. And so yeah, even Achal has put in a comment that South Africa is the dark horse. Like they have an excellent top in Coetzee's face. Exactly, they have it in them. And apart from along with this, the one key factor for South Africa's success, I think, rests on how well Aiden Markram does, because he is probably one of the better players of spin that they have with them, and his handy off breaks will also come into play on turners, because he's someone who can do that holding job that we see Glenn Maxwell doing. So both of them are somewhat similar in the kind of role that they are playing, and he is probably their key player. If he does well, if he bats through the middle, because he's someone who can ensure that they don't collapse. He and Van der Dusen, they have to put in those partnership in the middle orders, tackle the spin, and build it up for the guys like Castle, Miller, and Jansen to come in and finish and go hell for leather. So he has to be crucial, and definitely they are one of the favorites to make it to the top four. I think these six teams overall, as we talk about them later on as well, really have, like, any four out of these can make it to the top four in my opinion. They can give the top, like India, England, Australia. I would be surprised if they one of these don't make it to the semis.
And I think before I jump on to who will probably be the fourth, as you say, if the top three are sealed. But I think with Aiden Markram, the question is also at what pace does he play in this World Cup? Because Van der Dussen is already a player who will go at those 80s, 90 strike rates, 90 to 100, somewhere there. But if Markram, we know Markram can go at a rapid pace. Like that's a change in his ODI game and limited overs game that I've seen across the last 2-3 years. If he can go at that pace in on good batting tracks, that could be the difference between, even though you have the Claessens and the Millers coming in, that could be the difference between South Africa getting those extra 50, 60 runs they need on really good batting tracks. So Markram's pace at which he bats will be a key factor, especially against spin. I think I would never, while South Africa have a great chance in the top four, while all the six teams that Naman mentioned have a great chance, I would never write off New Zealand or Pakistan because New Zealand's record in ICC tournaments in the recent past has been phenomenal over the past few years. And yeah, that I think we are going to come to them anyways when we talk about their teams. But yeah, these teams seem good. But South Africa, I wouldn't be surprised. I'd actually be happy if South Africa make the top four because of the team that they have. They'd be deserving to be there.
Yeah, I would actually say it is more or less between South Africa and New Zealand. Pakistan, I'm a tad bit pensive, primarily because the last time they played in India was in 2016, and that was for the T20 World Cup. So there's not a lot of experience on that regard when it comes to playing in home soil. Obviously, not happen because of the relation between the two countries, and so and I think that given the momentum that South Africa is carrying, given that New Zealand's is really good record in these tournaments, so I think. But yeah, can never rule out Pakistan, of course. But I do believe it will be between South Africa and New Zealand by and large. Um, and I think, as Bharat said, I think South Africa just about makes it. But that's the best part about these things. You never know, and sometimes you do end up getting proven wrong, and yeah, and that's perfectly fine. So yeah.
Right. It will be interesting to see if South Africa does make it across because we have a lot of comments coming here about, some of the key players that could really change the fortunes for South Africa. So let's see how that plays out. But let's move on to New Zealand, right? Now, this is again quite an interesting team who have made it to the semi-final stage of every World Cup, okay? This is every ODI World Cup since 2007. Now, I think with England, they have perhaps produced some of the greatest ever 50 over contests. And even though they had that heartbreak in the 2019 final, they've really changed the way they look right at the game. Now, having won an ICC World Test Championship, making it to the final four of the T20 World Cup on two consecutive occasions in 2021 and 2022, this is a team you can definitely not write out. So let's start off with Bharat on this one. How would you assess, the Kiwis and their recent form and the lead up to the World Cup?
First question, and this will be the question that will define, I think, New Zealand's World Cup campaign is how fit is Kane Williamson? What is his fitness status? How does he play? Because he's had a long injury layoff. How does he come back? I think he played in the practice game. He did pretty decently, but so how is Kane Williamson? How is Tim Southee? I think Tim Southee is not playing for the first part of the tournament. He also has a fracture in the same game as Travis Head. I think if I recall right, not Travis Head, sorry. In the so he had a fracture. So how fit is Tim Southee? So these are the questions they'll have. Oh yeah, I think Chinmay is saying Kane is ruled out of the England game. So when does Kane Williamson come back? They have a great team. Like they have a good team because with Devon Conway uh, opening up for them, they have a great opener who knows these conditions, who has played in sprint-friendly conditions, who knows how to tough it out, who knows how to take the game forward. Trent Bolt again, you can't talk about pace is without talking about Trent Bolt. They have a pretty decent middle order as well with the likes of Daryl Mitchell, Glenn Phillips. I'm pretty excited to see how Glenn Phillips goes. Uh, a concern for me is Lockie Ferguson's form because he did not have a good IPL. He has not had such a great time over the past year or two, if I'm not wrong. So how does Lockie Ferguson do? I think they opened with Rachin Ravindra in the practice game against Pakistan, if I'm not wrong. So they're trying out certain things. Yeah. Yes. So how does Rachin Ravindra play? Tom Latham obviously is a good player of spin. Like he'll also be a key player for them because he plays the sweep quite well. I recall him just taking down India spinners in one of the series a couple of years ago, 2-3 years ago. So there are questions around New Zealand. Again, Mitchell Santner, does he play that holding role? How does he bat? How good is his batting form right now? Because I don't think he played enough for Chennai as well in these conditions. So all of these questions are there, but New Zealand have a way of just clicking in ICC tournaments. So that's something I would not write off. But yeah, major questions looming for them being Kane Williamson's fitness. So I think if they can answer that, if Williamson can come back and still remain that glue that holds the batting order together, this is a New Zealand team that can go quite far in the World Cup.
Absolutely. And let's have a quick look at the live chat as well. Now we have Surya who brings in this point of, if using Rachin Ravindra as an opener is a sign of things to come, because it might just given like a lot more batting options and having, Neesham and Santner at 7 and 8. So, Rishabh, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think they were just experimenting, or is this something that's actually going to happen in the World Cup?
I think they would definitely try something like this because again the key for New Zealand in this World Cup is going to be their middle order, and there is a lot of experience over there. You have with the likes of Tom Latham, with the likes of Kane Williamson and so on. Rachin Ravindra has done fairly well since he's broken into this team, and I I think if this experiment sort of thing works, they will carry on with this, and it won't be surprised if they go about it for the remainder of the tournament. That being said, it will depend a lot on like the ones previously mentioned. If this the experiment with Rachin Ravindra does rely on Kane Williamson's fitness, it does rely on the form of players like Darren Mitchell and Tom Latham, and if that doesn't work, it becomes a bit concerning. Then they might go back to their previous setups. But yeah, Rachin Ravindra opening, I definitely see it happening.
Yeah,
Just
because he
one thing
comes
to
in.
add on here. In
Yeah.
the build-up, we've seen Finn Allen being backed over the past 2 years by New Zealand, and even Guptill lost his place to him. But to see him miss out on a spot right at the end was slightly surprising for me. I mean, you could probably sense it coming that he hasn't been giving the returns that we have been expecting of him. Though he has gone bang bang in a few games, but that consistency has been lack of consistency had been a highlight with him. So when Will Young came into the setup, it gave two things that okay, first of all, he's somebody who can bat in the top three anywhere. He can even bat at three. So that was one aspect given Williamson's concerns. Now that Rachin is coming at the top, like we remember back in 21 as well, they opened with Mitchell in the T20 World Cup, and that really paid dividends for them. And in the short career that Will Young has had, he has been quite consistent. He averages more than 40, and he strikes at around 85, which is decent enough for these conditions, if that's what they're looking at. And yeah, I think somebody mentioned in the comments that even Conway has become a mainstay for them in the past couple of years.
Correct. Yeah.
So he brings in that valuable experience. With Rachin Ravindra, if they want to give them more options with the bowling and slot him at the top, then they can play with effectively three spinners and even four if you consider Glenn Phillips with his offies. That gives them a benefit, but I'm not quite sure how well will he fare against the quality of bowling up top that we're going to see in the World Cup. I'm slightly concerned there because Will Young has played tests quite consistently at the top as well, and he has the experience of facing quality pace. I'm just slightly concerned if they go with that route moving ahead, because if that happens, then who bats at three? Probably Will Young is going to slot in at three in that case. So
Hmm.
it's slightly tricky how well do they tackle with their top order until Williamson comes back.
Yeah.
And having said that, there is one major miss for them in this World Cup, that is Michael Bracewell. He is like he bowls those handy off breaks. He is lethal at the death, and he can also hang around. Like I think remember last year or so, he scored that 100 against India when all hopes seemed to be lost for New Zealand. And since then, unfortunately, he's had that injury during the around the IPL and unfortunately misses out. Had Bracewell been around, I would have looked at this New Zealand squad in a completely different way because he really gives the all-round balance that they would require.
Fair enough. And let's take this question that's on our screen right now about, how, although New Zealand has had these World Cup final finishes in 2015 and 2019, the person claims that, the New Zealand team is on a generational decline as their hopes, lie on Darren Mitchell, Trent Bolt, and the spin combo. So, Bharat, what are your thoughts on this one? Do you somewhere see that there is a generational decline in the Black Caps ecosystem?
I mean, any cricketing generation that's seeing the end of the careers of players like Kane Williamson or Trent Bolt is losing out on something when the next generation comes in. But uh, New Zealand still have quality. Like they have great quality on, as you say, right, on a given day, some of these players can win matches. Like Daryl Mitchell can take the game away. He has that power in the middle overs to take the game away from you. But how well, I think Chinmay gets it right. What is their playing 11? How many matches does Ish Sodhi play for them? Because Ish Sodhi has been in pretty decent form. And does Ish Sodhi play all the matches? Who are their all rounders? Like Mitchell Santner can play the role of an all rounder. They have Jimmy Neesham. So how does this play out is also a question they need to answer. Who are their pacers? Because I don't recall, let's say, Matt Henry having so much experience in the subcontinent. I think out of the ones that are fit, Trent Bolt has a lot of experience in the subcontinent, so he'll be leading the bowling attack, regardless of whether it's a sprint-friendly attack or a spin-friendly pitch or a pace-friendly pitch. He has to lead it because he has the ability to get swing wherever, even if there's 1% chance of getting swing, Trent Bolt is one of the people who will probably get that movement. But I wouldn't call it a generational decline. They are somewhere in a transition period, but they are a mix and match of players who are coming in, players who are very experienced. But what they lack probably is, I think, historically, is winning a limited overs tournament, right? That experience is probably not there. But I would, again, I back New Zealand to do well because they've done it. They've shown it across different ICC tournaments that they're not phased by the occasion. It doesn't matter who the opposition is. I remember in the T20 World Cup, they just took India down. That was a particularly traumatic, but yeah. So they're not phased by the occasion. That's one of the things to always keep in mind about New Zealand, that beat beat any opposition, beat any condition, you back them to remain committed to what their ideology or the way they play is. They're not phased by situations, is what I feel.
Fair
Interesting
enough.
that someone highlights the generational gap aspect, and I think this is where another aspect that of the modern day game that comes into play is about the central contracts. We've seen the likes of Trent Bolt and Jimmy Neesham not taking up the central contracts, and even towards the end when Martin Guptill started losing out his spot to Finale, and even he decided to go against taking the central contract. So that I believe is going to be a highlight across teams in the times to come. New Zealand has still managed to hold on to their key players, the generational players for the longer run. I mean, they still have the likes of Williamson, Saudi, and Bolt, and even Conway. Although he is pretty fresh into his international career, he has been around for a long time, and he has a. You look at him as an experienced player. You don't look at him as someone who just came into the team to side into the side 2 years ago. So they have a decent balance. Of course, what we are probably looking at is how what is the quality that these players are bringing into the setup, which also I believe is there to be seen. But just the fact that we have only seen them around for the past 2.5 years, we feel that there's a lack of like older players, because in the previous World Cups we see like in 15 and 19 they had the likes of McCullum, then in 19 they still had Guptill and Taylor. So the fact that these people who we've seen ever since our childhood are not there is what makes us feel that the generational players are not there. But even thereafter, we see that the players have some sort of quality in them.
Fair enough. And
Yeah.
Rishabh, do you want to take this one? Yeah, the question on our screen right now about how there's no X factor on a finals day. What do you think about that?
I'm not. It's not an easy one to say because then again, because I do believe that some of these players they can definitely. I mean, they can definitely win you a game on their day, and they can. And I mean, they mind you, they did it in the World Test Championships. They came agonizingly close in 2019 World Cup. Um, so I don't know whether there is a lack of an X factor, but I do think when it comes to and addressing the initial question of a generational decline, uh, I will say that a lot of the hopes for New Zealand in this World Cup is riding on their experienced bunch. It's the likes of Trent Bolt, Kane Williamson, Jimmy Neesham, Tom Latham, Tim Southee, someone who's coming out of injury, someone who will be vital in the Indian conditions. So yes, you will require the likes of Devin Conway and Daryl Mitchell and Glenn Phillips who will be vital. And I think someone just mentioned that maybe Glenn Phillips might bring the X factor, whoever it might be. But for the solidity of this New Zealand team, for the entirety of this tournament, you will require the old guns to be at their best. And so because if they can bring their A game, then New Zealand have a very good chance, I would say.
Oh,
Absolutely. And yeah, go on, Bharat.
yeah, just to put a point in, the X factor does not necessarily have to be a player who can score at a strike rate of 150. If you recall the 2019 World Cup final or the last T20 World Cup that England won, they won on the back of Ben Stokes scoring at a very, very leisurely pace, if you recall. So probably someone under pressure who can just hold things together, which is again why I believe Kane Williamson is central to anything that they do this time, because he brings that calm onto the field, because he calms the proceedings for New Zealand and lets others take the center stage. So I think that's a kind of X factor that we probably don't appreciate as much in the era of T20 hitters and this thing. But I'm looking forward to that kind of impact as well from players.
And this is exactly where building partnerships will be vital in this World Cup through the middle overs. Like not giving into the temptation of just going after the spinners if there's turn on offer. If somebody can stitch those partnerships, because that's what Stokes has done. Even though like right from Leeds, if you remember when he stitched the partnership with Jack Leach, that's a different format altogether though. But it's just the fundamentals remain the same. How long can you hang around and face the bowling and just ensure that you are not losing sight of what's there to be achieved in that particular innings. So, and this is where Williamson and Latham, the way they stitch partnerships in the middle, is going to come in for New Zealand.
Absolutely. And I think even Chinmay brings in this point of how, X Factor is usually this player who stays till the end and plays in all these important games. So I think New Zealand will really be banking on Kane Williamson to, come handy. And I think Achal also has this comment of, partnership is where Latham becomes key at four. So New Zealand will have to figure out this ideal combination that would work well for them. Now, let's move on to our next team under focus. We have Sri Lanka, right? Now, again, a very illustrious history when you look at their, past World Cups. Now, they've been champions in 1996, semi-finalists in 2003, finalists in 2007 and 2011. Now, Sri Lanka obviously had this fantastic stretch, right, in World Cups for these 15 years. And then they had this whole transition phase where Kumar Sangakkara, Mahela Jayawardene, all of them were gone. And it was Dasun Shanaka who really led this revolution and make them look like a very different side. So, Naman, let's open this with you. How would you assess Sri Lanka's recent form in the lead up to the World Cup? I mean, you can also put in context their Asia Cup outing as well.
Interesting that you highlighted the fact about the transition phase. If we look back 8 years back, like they had the likes of Dilshan, Sangakkara, like slowly and gradually all of them left. Sangakkara and Malinga were around for the longest time, but moving on from the likes of Dilshan, Sangakkara, Jayawardene, Malinga, you don't easily do that. Like these are like these were as good as the likes of Sachin, Saurav, Dravid, and Lakshman for India. So it definitely requires some time to really get the crop of players and back those. If you recall 4, 5, 6 years back, every time any team played Sri Lanka, you would see different names coming together, and the captain would have been different every time. Sometimes it was Chandimal, sometimes you would see Matthews as the captain. In between, even Sara Pereira led the T20 side. There was Malinga in between, and Dimut Karunaratne, of course. So it kept switching series after series. They didn't stick with one particular unit or one particular leader consistently. Now, in the past 2, 3 years, specifically with the white ball side, they have stuck with Shanaka. They have stuck with some crop of players, at least with regards to their batting. So there is some sort of consistency. Blokes have gotten certain games in a row, and that is there to be seen in the kind of returns that they are giving. Last year itself, the way they won the Asia Cup in T20, amidst the turmoil that was going on in the nation, and then even like ever since then, they have been pretty balanced with regards to their structure. About this Asia Cup, well, it was slightly like they did well, But what happened in the final, the way Siraj just ran through their top order, I think that was something else. It had a lot to do with the quality of the bowling that Siraj possessed, but their batting just didn't turn up on that day. They were the kind of shots that they were playing. It didn't seem like they were really reading what the bowler is bowling there. So they have to know how do you hang around when you're facing quality pace. Against spin, their batters have grown up on those conditions, so they know how to play the spin well. But against this quality pace, they need to hang around. And as far as their overall team structure, well, Hasaranga is going to be a miss. Like, although he's as IPL returns might not have been great, like in the previous season it was great. This time around, he didn't really come into the season at all. So he had some experience of playing in India, so he's going to be a miss. And even Chamira, well, I don't know what has been happening to him over the past year and a half, because last I remember him was playing for Lucknow. Since then, I don't recall any participation of his in cricket altogether. We might have played, but I might not have followed that. So these two are going to be misses for them. And overall, in the batting, I think Patum Nisanka has come of age. In T20 format, you might see that he's slightly slow, but for the ODIs, he's a good fit. He can hang around and play the long innings if needed. And then you've got the likes of Charith Asalanka, Kusal Mendes, and Shanaka down the order, and Dhananjay De Silva, who can also stitch those partnerships and come in and bowl uh, if needed. Having said that, I don't see how Karunaratne fits in the team. When they called him back for the ODIs, I was slightly surprised that he hadn't really been in the white ball plans for a while, and now suddenly, right before the World Cup, he's coming in. So, was not quite sure if he fits in. And we saw that he started off in the Asia Cup, but then Kusal Pereira came back and replaced him, and then ever since then he has been playing around. So they have a decent batting order, but their bowling needs to step up. Lalage has some potential in him. He has shown that Tikshana has been playing in these conditions, so he poses a threat to any team through the power play to the middle. He can bowl anywhere. Tikshana can bowl anywhere in the 50 overs, and it depends how they manage him. But their pace, let's see how Pathirana goes consistently in with 10 overs. In 4 overs, we've seen what he can do in the IPL, but can he really give 10 overs that well is going to be a concern for me. And a lot of rest on Shanaka, because here he is probably their fifth bowler, given the balance that they have. So he'll be sharing those 10 overs with the likes of Dhananjay and Asalanka. So he really needs to come together well as a bowler and a batter, because his captaincy has been pretty good. But yeah, like Achal also mentions, that he needs to step up with the bat. And yeah, like the words, you can't think of milder words to uh, express how he's been performing recently. They have a decent team, decent balance, but not very bullish about them given how consistently they turn up on the day. So these are my 2 cents for them.
That's a fair assessment, and I want to bring this comment also into perspective, because now Sri Lanka is often, deemed as this team that's best suited for like 250, 270 pitches, but not your flat 300 or 320 plus tracks, right? And their bowlers can hold their own, but there were some concerns about, if they have if their bowling group is in the best of the forms. But I think one of the biggest positives for them is how their batters are outstanding players of spin as well. So, Bharat, how would you look at this, and any specific batters that you think have really stood out in recent times and have impressed you?
Uh, I think Charita Salanka has done quite well for them since I think the last couple of years he's been pretty good in the middle order for the batting. Kusal Mendes, they've backed him for like 8 years, 8, 9, I don't know, very long. He hasn't really been the next generation, the generational player that they backed him to be. But this could be his chance to leave a legacy for the Sri Lankan team, because Kushal Mendes is a very, very weird player for me. He has these flashes of brilliance where you see that there's so much potential, so much talent, but then there are periods of absolutely zilch coming in. So I was very disappointed in the Asia Cup final when they were like 5 wickets down, ball is swinging, and then he goes for an expansive drive through covers. So that maturity is something that I think Sri Lanka lacks. They have lacked for quite a while in that sense. Which is where I think at some point Dimut Karunaratne can bring something, because you need a player who looks at things saying, okay, there's so much happening. I want things to slow down. But yeah, And Kusal Pereira, I don't know how fit he is. Again, that's always been the question with Kusal Pereira. He probably played one of the best test innings I remember in a long time. He has the capacity to play those games. He's very attacking. That's one thing with Kusal Pereira as well. Uh, in their batting, Pathum Nisanka again done pretty well, but also depends on how consistent are they on these pitches. Because I think someone just mentioned in the comments, can they get those 350s? Because 350, because I don't recall the last time Sri Lanka really outbatted an opposition. I recall them defending low totals. I recall them chasing down middling totals. But when was the last time they really outbatted this thing? So that is one question. Hasaranga is a big miss, because Hasaranga not only bowls extremely well, he's that pinch hitter at the end as well, who can give you those 15-20 runs easily. And in a world where Dasun Shanaka is both short of confidence and form, you probably need that little bit of backup to him. Velalage has shown some potential with the bat as well. Like, again, with the bat is where I'm looking at Sri Lanka right now. But again, as I said with New Zealand, as I said with South Africa, it also depends on where is Dasun Shanaka right now. Because I think just before their World Cup squad was announced, there were rumors that Shanaka will be removed from captaincy, that Shanaka might step down. Stuff like that had come up, because Shanaka's form has been pretty bad. But then Shanaka in India, Shanaka against India is a very different beast, as we all know. So I'm especially looking forward to seeing how he performs in this World Cup. Their pace bowling attack again, Pathirana with that slinging action of his, can he? Uh, can he, what does it? Where is his role? Because in a 50-over game, it's very different from what a T20 game is. Do you use him with the new ball? Do you not use him with the new ball? Do you just use him in the middle overs and the death? So those are the questions. I am also looking forward to how consistent is Lahiru Kumara, because he has decent pace, but with Kumara, the control has always been an issue. So how consistent is Lahiru Kumara with his lengths, with his this thing? So that is those are some concerns. I don't see Sri Lanka doing making it to the knockouts realistically, because there are too many teams who are extremely good on too many days for Sri Lanka to slip through or make it through. So obviously they should aim, because they have the capacity to beat any of these teams, as we saw in the Asia Cup. They have the capacity to beat these teams, but I expect them to be a middling or lower half of the table side this time as well.
Fair enough. And again, another interesting comment. Now, many are, questioning Dasun Shanaka's place in the side. His confidence has been low. His form has also been quite up and down. But this comment says, in this ODI side, he's like a captain player, just like those old English captains whose playing talents weren't all that great, but they still merit a place in the team, right? So, Rishabh, what are your thoughts on this one? Dasun Shanaka, the captain, versus him, the player.
The immediate reference to Owen Morgan is very nice, but I, but with Dasun Chanaka, I mean, I think in terms of seniority, in terms of experience, he is a captain who kind of selects himself. I think he, he in all likelihood he is their best captain kind of player. And yeah, form wise not very good, but he did do pretty well as a captain during Asia Cup, um, right up until the final, that is. And I feel a lot is riding on Shanaka's performance, on his captaincy. Kind of have to back him for this tournament, because uh, it's because this squad it's kind of depleted. You don't have Chamira, you don't have Manendu Hasaranga. These are folks who are automatic selections, and so it becomes tricky. It becomes tricky for the other players as well, because they'll have to shoulder a lot of the responsibilities, such as Kusal Pereira, such as Asalanka, and and of course Pathirana, who's what 20, 21, yet he finds himself in this position of almost leading the Sri Lankan bowling lineup. So this is a team that will rely heavily on their captain, as Bharat mentioned, and if he can cajole this team into doing something. Maybe something might happen, but yeah, uh, I don't see this team making the knockout stages. Yeah.
Just one player
Right.
that we spoke a little less about is Sadira Samaravikrama. Like in the build up, like I wasn't sure. I didn't recall. I recall him playing consistently for the side a few years back, but in the I think Cricket the Tashan also has a comment about him that he was one of the positives to take away from the Asia Cup for Sri Lanka, and if he's going to bat at four consistently, like I've been mentioning for all the teams, their middle order, the one who bats at four, if that person can play spin well, they need to stitch the partnership with the top three and the power hitters to come down. So he's going to be quite critical for them. And if they lose out their openers early on, and if the middle order is exposed to some quality players, then that is going to pose troubles to them. And which is where the likes of Samar Vikrama will be very important for their overall batting efforts.
Absolutely. And now, let's take our focus onto Pakistan, right? Again, quite an interesting team with respect to how, when you look at their past five World Cup performances, now they were eliminated in the first round at three of these past five World Cups, including 2019. And I think the quarterfinal win versus West Indies in 2011 is like their only notable, knockout triumph in this country, especially in the ODI World Cup. Now, again, there's a bit of paradox, right, when you look at Pakistan, because they were ranked number one like less than a week ago, but now they look like an entirely different unit after that Asia Cup as well. And most of the performances in the recent times also overshadowed all the good work that they have done. So let's open this discussion with Rishabh. How would you assess Pakistan's form in the lead up to this World Cup, and do you see them go all the way?
I'm very excited to see the bowling. Their bowling. I know that Naseem Shah did not make it, but even still, with the likes with Shaheen Shah sort of leading the attack, and Haris Rauf and so on, I and I think their fast bowling attack is almost on par with some of the best in this World Cup. It's one that will cause a lot of trouble. It's one I'm very excited to look forward to, and I think it will be that will influence the rest of their performance to quite some degree, because I think, like I earlier mentioned, they have not played a lot of cricket over here. I'm not sure if a lot of their own fans will be present in the stadiums. So I believe some of their games are also played under closed doors. So it'll be tricky for Pakistan in this World Cup because of factors outside of cricket. But I think if their bowling can perform almost every game, and if the rest can back it up, then yeah, they can make a case for the top four. I'm not sure if they can still, if they are ahead of New Zealand and South Africa at this stage, but yeah, an exciting team nonetheless.
Fair enough. And let's quickly look at this equation on our screen, right? Cricket that Ashan says Pakistan in ICC tournaments is equal to South Africa performances outside the World Cup. So, Naman, considering the squad composition that Pakistan has on paper, how well do you think this statement will be true?
Trying to understand the context in which this is meant. Like, do they mean to say that South Africa performances outside the World Cup are impeccable, and then when they come to the World Cup, they just tend to slow down. Whereas with Pakistan, outside the World Cup, they tend to, you know, mess around a bit, but when it comes to the World Cups, they hit their straps to an extent. But like Neha, you mentioned initially that in the recent times, they haven't really been big in the ODI format to the till the knockout stages. But having said that, always, like over the past decades, ever since I've been following cricket, the one thing that you always hear about Pakistan is their pace attack. Now that feature still remains, but the highlight, the major difference that we can see this time around is the quality in their batting as well. Now you have a batter in Pakistan that you can probably put at par with the best in the world in Babar Azam. And even with their openers, like Imam Ulak has been very consistent in the recent past, and Fakhar Zaman has been a bit up and down, been a bit up and down, but he has that experience, and he, like, let's say if they back him at the top, or if they like go with Abdullah Shafiq even now to open with Imam, so And then of course we have the likes of Rizwan in the middle and Iftikhar Ahmed, who I'm really excited to see how Iftikhar goes here, because he really did well in the T20 format. So if can he convert that in this format as well and play through the middle, if there's a collapse, hang in there and then make it big at the death. So that's going to be really critical. Having said that, they also have the likes of Shadab Khan, who I really rate his batting very highly. More than his bowling, I'm looking forward to his batting right now, because in his bowling, like, he doesn't come across as a kind of leg spinner who would be buying wickets on the surface. He comes across as somebody who would like to control the flow of runs. That's how I've seen him so far. I might be wrong on this, but overall, the composition looks good. This is a balanced Pakistani team. I'm slightly bearish on how their spin bowling is going to work on these conditions, because they haven't really played here. And even in Pakistan, the conditions that they've been playing in are not similar to India. Those are not turning tracks. Those are highways. So yeah, exactly. Neha. Those are very, very flat decks. So let's see how do they adapt to these conditions, and even the the batting adapts to these spinning tracks here as well. If you look at the spin overall, they have Shadab Khan, they have Mohammad Nawaz, and then they have the likes of Aga Salman and Iftikhar Ahmed, who can just roll their arm over. So you can see that there are bowlers who can probably try to control, but I'm not sure how well can they even do that to control the flow of runs. For me, like, the equation for them to move ahead is simple. Like, Babar has to have the World Cup of his life to make it big for them. The bowling looks slim because of the lack of Naseem Shah now, but then they still have somebody like a Mohammad Wasim Jr. who has been around, and they've recalled Hassan Ali. Like, Hassan Ali and ICC events are again a different love story altogether. Like, all the social media buzz around him, like the few drops here and there, he's always been in the highlights. So, like, but now you would hope that since he's made of the squad at the last moment, this is probably the last World Cup that he would be playing. So let's see if he can make it to the 11 and hits his stripes well. So, and again, one major factor for them is to see how well their bowling does once they don't get wickets in the power play. I remember on Crickbuzz Live, Harsha Bogle mentioning this, that every time you just try to play the Pakistani seamers out in the power play, you will end up getting out to them, and that is where if you have to counter attack to them, and which is what we did in the Asia Cup, and we saw how that just changed the ball game altogether. Like, Shaheen's overall approach to bowling sort of changed. They didn't know what to do in the middle overs at that point, and which is why I believe that their spinners probably do not have the wicket taking ability as well as some of the others do. So they have to take those wickets in the power play, and through the middle, if they can at least control the runs as well as it can, then they have some chance there. I would still not count them out, because this time I'm quite bullish on their batting as well. I can see, like, blokes stitching together partnerships and not getting out in weird fashions. And even their fielding, I think, has improved by leaps and bounds overall. Like, you have the likes of Shadab Khan, who's a gun in the field and probably among the best fielders in the world right now. The ball always keeps following him. So overall, this is a well balanced unit. If you look at the past two 15 and 19 World Cup, this is much more balanced than those. It just comes up to how well they do against the team on a given day. And if they pick up those 2 3 wickets in the power play, then they look a different side altogether in that term.
Exactly. And looking at Hassan Ali right now, he's your comeback man in this squad coming after a big layoff. And this comment also puts things in perspective of how Hassan Ali is always like in the memes. And that will pretty much constitute Pakistan's entire World Cup entertainment. So, Bharat, how happy are you to see Hassan Ali back in Pakistan colors? And do you see him make a splash this World Cup?
I mean, we got to be honest about Hassan Ali. He had a great beginning to his career. Like he was considered the next big thing, but somewhere he has fallen off. I think the batters also teams figured out what was his strong point and how he used to bowl. He's always great entertainment when he takes wickets, the way he speaks, the way he expresses himself, all of that. But you got to be realistic about his abilities right now, especially in conditions that are starkly unfamiliar for him, where I don't think any of the pace attack has played any games in India, if I'm not wrong, before this. Neither Haris Rauf nor Shaheen Afridi nor Hassan Ali. Hassan Ali might have. I don't know if he played the 2016 edition, but of the T20 World Cup. But Other than that, I don't think any of these guys have bowled in India or they have any experience. So that's the question Pakistan need to answer. I think, as Naman said, what happens when Shaheen Afridi does not get you those 2-3 wickets in the opening burst? Uh, I mean, Harish Rauf's rise has been excellent. Like it has been great to watch. But how well does he bowl in the middle overs? Because I think they're looking at him as a bit of a middle overs enforcer as well, uh, with the kind of pace he has and the kind of uh, hit effort he puts in. Uh, I am looking at Fakhar Zaman this time because he is the only person in that batting order. I mean, Babar Azam is a great player. Like he is, as Naman said, you can put him up on the pedestal of the world's best of the best right now. But Fakhar Zaman is, I dislike using the word X factor, but he's the kind of guy who can give you that start that takes Pakistan from being a team that scores that 300 to, again, I'm still looking at teams that can score 350 with ease, 350, 400, because Pakistan in their warm-up game, they scored 350 for 345 or 350, and New Zealand chased it down in 40 overs, which ideally tells them that they were 50 runs short. They were 50, 60 runs short on that pitch in those conditions. So Fakhar Zaman is that player who can give you those extra 50, 60 runs if he clicks. So how does Fakhar Zaman go? With Imam Hulak, again, the problem will be the strike rate at which he goes. Babar is a player who motors along at 90s or close to 100 strike rate when he's in flow without taking too many risks. But Imam Hulak is a not as fluent a player, let's say, as Babar is. His strike rate, if I recall, is somewhere in the late 80s or the early 90s. So does Imam Hulak, if he plays that long innings, because you know that he has the ability to play those long innings, does he have it in him to accelerate at the end to take Pakistan, to give Pakistan that push at the end? So that will be a question, because Pakistan are very much a team that play like India do in their batting. They depend on, let's say, the Imam Hulak, Babar Azam, and Rizwan now to lay that base, and then they see how much can we get at the end. So can these guys do it? I think Naman also mentioned Iftikhar. I'm interested to see how he goes, because he is, again, a player who can enforce in the middle overs when you're batting. He can take the attack to the spinners. So question marks there. Shadab Khan's bowling form, again, not been very, very good. Uh, how well does Shadab Khan bowl will matter a lot, because this is India. When you're playing in pitches like, let's say, Lucknow, when you're playing against Afghanistan, that's a match that I'm looking forward to, because their spinners will have to stand up. I don't think Mohammad Nawaz is a bona fide spinner, because I think he's a slow bowler, if I'm not wrong. So Shadab Khan is their only realistic frontline spin option in the playing 11, if they go with that. I think they have Usama Mir as well in the mix. He's a very young leg spinner right now. Maybe if the pitch is very, very conducive to spin, they might bring him in. But there are a lot of question marks for Pakistan. They have to address those. What is their playing 11? How good of a form is Fakhar Zaman in? Because I recall, I think there was a bit of shuffling at the top of the order very recently as well with Zaman's form. So questions regarding that. And for me, another question will be, who plays at 5, 6, 7? Like Rizwan is playing. You're backing Rizwan. Rizwan has been in pretty decent form, but does Rizwan have it to uh, go at a striker of 130, 140 at the end of the innings? Question mark, because he'll be there in some situations like that. I'm seeing that they started using Saud Shakil in the lower middle order as well. Now, Saud Shakil, again, not known for being the enforcer or going at a really high pace. So, do you play him or Agha Salman? Now, again, their finishing capabilities are very much in the question, because I don't know who the player in their 11 is who can go at who can stand up to like the likes of Klassen Miller or Surya Kumar Yadav for us, or the Pandyas, or even Australia's. Who is it that will take the game in between the 45 and 50th over to tell you, okay, I'm standing up, you're going to get 50, 60 runs because of me? So those are questions that Pakistan will have to answer.
Fair enough, and we have a lot of good comments coming in now with Naseem Shah out. Pakistan missed a trick, not putting in their lesser known seamers like Arshad Iqbal or even Abbas Afridi, as they could have sprung in this surprise element. So, Rishabh, do you think Pakistan missed a trick or two?
Uh, Maybe hard to tell because Hassan Ali's selection was fairly obvious, given that he has more experience and he's been around the setup a little bit longer. But and it's a World Cup scenario, so sometimes bringing in someone who's slightly unknown can carry a bit of a risk. But with Pakistan, like I think, as Naman and Bharat very nicely mentioned, it- it's if you can navigate the power play overs of Haris Rauf, Shaheen Afridi, and Hassan Ali, you're then it becomes a concern. Stemming the runs becomes a concern because their spinners don't necessarily bring a lot of confidence. And given the matchup that Bharat mentioned between Pakistan and Afghanistan in terms of spin, I might argue that Afghanistan have better spinners. So in that regard, Pakistan is lacking, and yeah, even batting wise, like Babar Al- Ba- Babar Azam needs he needs to have like a player of the series kind of performance here. If Pakistan need to have any hope putting up serious amounts of runs, and he needs because the difference between someone like a Babar Azam and some really good batters like Steve Smith and Kane Williamson and Virat Kohli in these teams, they get pretty good support around them. In terms of Pakistan, not a lot of support in that regard, and that in terms of backing them up in terms of in partnerships and so on. So this is where Pakistani batting, which is why I earlier said it will heavily rely on their pace bowling attack, their fortunes in this World Cup, because everywhere else it's question marks all over.
Just adding on to Surya's comment here that probably going in with some lesser known seamers like Arshad Iqbal or Abbas Afridi, I believe like although like these two haven't had a lot of experience, and there's another spinner like we have Abrar Ahmed who debuted against England in the Test series. Probably he could have been drafted. And he hasn't made his ODI debut yet, but he would still bring that mystery element with his spin. And since they do lack somewhere in the spin department, they could have brought him in only for conditions where it suited the spin and just see how it goes. He is in the traveling reserves, I believe. So like let's see if he can make it to the squad and get a few games there. And he could have been brought that X factor element to their entire composition. And Mr. Bean Derby, yeah, that was something about the previous World Cup. Let's see what's the entertaining aspect in this World Cup that we get, because that really cracked open a lot of joke, a lot of humor last time around.
True. And, before we move on to our last team under focus, the Netherlands, what is the one match that you all are looking forward to seeing? I mean, obviously the India Pakistan match is there, but any other matches that you guys are looking forward to? Let's start with Bharat.
Pakistan, Afghanistan. I am looking forward to that game because Afghanistan ran Pakistan quite close in the recently concluded ODI series as well. A small point about Pakistan, I think, which will because I don't see any other team that is so dependent on one part of the game, which is the power play overs, as Pakistan is. Because they're a completely different team if they take 2-3 wickets up front. Like they will dictate the game from there on, and with the players they have, if you get to 200 250 against Pakistan, you'll very likely lose because that's tailor made for the kind of game Imam, Babar, and Rizwan play. So they are going up against Afghanistan, which is a team that is looking forward to those kind of totals in that sense. So it'll be fun to see how they go, because Afghanistan spin attack against Babar, who I believe is a really good player of spin, and so with Imam ul Haq. So I really want to see how that goes. So yeah, that'll be a fun game to watch. Where is it happening? Is it happening in Lucknow or Chennai?
Which one?
Afghanistan,
Afghanistan.
Pakistan.
Afghanistan,
Afghanistan,
Pakistan
Pakistan, I
is in
think.
Lucknow, right?
I think it's Chennai, Chidambaram Stadium. Yeah.
Uh, yeah, it's in Chennai. Yeah, right. It's in
Yes.
Chennai.
Yeah. So what Chennai pitch? Like all Chennai pitches are slightly Chennai pitches in that sense, but exactly which version of it will come? How slow is it? What kind of bounce and how grippy is it? Will be the question. So yeah, that'll be a that's what I'm looking forward to.
Unless it's similar to the surface on which England played the first test last time around, wherein they batted out for 2 days. I mean, if that England team can bat 2 entire days on a pitch, I won't be surprised if a team scores 600 there.
I mean, I think I'll wait for Virat again to come into the stump mic and say, "This is the last amount of grass you're going to see through the entire series," like he did in that match. So,
Yeah. So with Pakistan, I was just looking at their overall schedule. It's quite interesting. They start off at Hyderabad against Netherlands and then against Sri Lanka. They have an upper hand in those games. But after that, the 3-4 games that they have consecutively, I think they aren't favorites to go into these games. First of all, against India at Ahmedabad, let's not talk much about that. We all know what's there to be talked about it. Up next, they're playing Australia at Chinnaswamy. Not sure if that's going to suit them because we know it's a flying saucer of the ground, and I believe that's where Australia is slightly better matched than Pakistan on that ground. Up next, they move to Chennai. They're playing Afghanistan there again. Like Afghanistan still has more quality than they have. Then they're playing South Africa at Chennai as well. So even there, the likes of Shamsi and Maharaj can probably pose a great threat to them, and let's see how their comes across there. Thereafter, they move to Kolkata to play Bangladesh, and then New Zealand at Bangalore again, which is again another place where New Zealand is probably better off. And then their match against England is at Kolkata. So Kolkata, you can expect some paces to come in slightly more than these other grounds. So not sure if their scheduling has done them a world of good in this regard. Like those 3 games in between, right, which I mentioned, they're playing Australia at Chinnaswamy, India at Ahmedabad, and Afghanistan in Chennai. These 3-4 games in the middle are really going to be crucial to see how well their campaign goes. Like even if they begin well, they have to consistently win games across these so that they can have a good finish. Otherwise, if they don't win these 2-3 games in the middle, the campaign can tend to derail as it tends to do with Pakistan. Let's see what
just
Kudrat
just,
has in place for them.
just a pointer. I think they're playing Australia in Chennai, not Bangalore, not Chinnaswamy.
Is it?
1 second.
Let me
I
check.
That's
Yeah.
I was
that
just
one.
checking the schedule.
A
Oh, it's
Google search
Bangalore.
shows me Bangalore. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm seeing Chennai, but yeah. Uh, then
Okay.
yeah, I was just checking. So
Which
maybe this
platform?
is this is
Can we
the legendary, very accurate crick buzz. So
I am looking at ClickBuzz. It says Bangalore.
I'm
wow,
looking at
okay.
Google. So, yeah.
What's going on?
Uh,
But,
ICC match
it's like this.
Bangalore.
That's the thing, but that is the game. I mentioned this yesterday as well. I am quite looking forward to Australia versus Pakistan, primarily because I want to see how both these two, their pace bowling lineup, how they perform. Because these two have, I think probably one of the best pace bowling setups belong to these two teams, and Chinnaswamy does on occasion provide a lot of support to the pace bowlers, and so if I mean, the prospect of Shaheen getting swing at Chinnaswamy is very exciting to me. So I would still go with Australia versus Pakistan. I think that it could if these two teams, if their pace bowlers can do damage in the power play overs, it'll be a cracker of a game.
Right, that will definitely be one game to watch out for. And let's move on to the Netherlands. Right now, looking at Netherlands, they are your only associate nation at this tournament. Earning their spot after finishing second in the World Cup qualifiers that happened. Now, this is their first appearance at the tournament since the last time it was played in the subcontinent, and that is in 2011, and their fourth in the history. Okay, so a lot of baggage coming here. Now, even in the World Cup qualifiers earlier that happened, now they announced themselves with that statement win versus the West Indies in the Super Over, where the scores were tied at 374, and all of us were like glued to the screen to see what would happen, and quite an iconic win, and that really changed the way we perceive the Netherlands. So to kickstart this discussion, Bharat, how would you assess, the Netherlands' recent form in the lead up to this World Cup? We don't see them often in like bilateral tournaments, like just here and there. But the qualifier has certainly done them a world of good, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's in two ways. Let's say if the absence of West Indies is a tragedy for how West Indies cricket has gone, Netherlands being here is a story of how well Netherlands have played. So, kudos to them. They've earned this spot. I think they've all like. It'll be interesting to see how they go. I again, straight up, you don't. You expect them to push teams, like you expect them to make some teams sweat, but again, that's where the gulf between them taking those moments and winning a game will be the question for them. uh, they have a good squad. I mean, they have a squad. I think as Chinmay is saying, they have some good all-rounders. They have decent bowlers as well. Not I don't think any of the bowlers are gonna hit the speed charts or any of that, but getting some movement, hitting the right areas is something uh, I recall their bowlers being pretty good at. Their batting is pretty good. I think their opening combination looks quite settled. They score at a fair clip. Again, all of this is in the context of them playing qualifiers against teams that were equally matched there. How do they do against teams that have far greater resources and far greater experience is also a question, because I think that is what this will come down to, right? Even for teams, even let's say if Netherlands is playing today, that they're playing against Afghanistan. What will hold Afghanistan in better stead, even let's say if the teams are fairly matched on paper in that sense, which I don't think that Afghanistan are a little better off, but the thing is, Afghanistan have the experience of playing against full member nations a lot more than let's say Netherlands have. And when you're in a situation where you need two 250 to win in 50 overs, or in the last 20 overs you need 150 to win, the ability to pace yourself, all of this comes through experience, especially against the bigger teams or so, as we say. So that is something I think Netherlands will be lacking. Again, talented players they have, yes. Vikramjeet Singh is a pretty decent bat. Max O'Dowd. I have a bias for Roelof van der Merwe. Again, RCB OG RCB fans will remember him, but yeah. Uh, Again, yeah, Bash the lead. I'm sorry if I'm murdering the pronunciations, but yeah. So uh, they have the players. Again, can they form a team? Do they have do they have what it takes to combine as a unit? Because I think in some of the games against the Karnataka team, I think they played against a few games against the Karnataka team. They did not bat well. Like in a couple of them, those games they did not bat well. So some questions regarding that. But I think, as Surya is mentioning in the comments, we need more teams to play against full member nations. Like we need let's say the Irelands, the Scotlands, the Netherlands, now Nepal, Singapore, UAE. All of these teams need to play a lot more games against far more resourceful and stronger teams, because they will learn how to come out of certain situations. Like Netherlands will probably have can take 4 quick wickets against India and get India 40 for 4. But India will have the experience to know how to get to like a 280 or 300 from there as well. Same it is with, let's say, the Australians or the South Africans. So that is what Netherlands needs. They need the confidence. They need the experience of being in these situations a lot more. Having said that, great opportunity for them to make their mark. Maybe with the kind of form, let's say, Sri Lanka or the chaos that Bangladesh is in, they could look at taking one of these teams down. Very realistic possibility. Again, Afghanistan as well. And so yeah, you never know. Again, special shout out, because it's an ICC event. You have Australia and South Africa also clamoring to lose one of the games that they're not supposed to lose. So yeah, these are questions that Netherlands need to answer. But I'm super excited to see how they go in this tournament.
Well put. And now, talking about Netherlands batting, obviously they have this batting code that has rightly been pointed out by Surya as well. So, Naman, how would you look at this batting combination play out in the World Cup? And do you see some big performances?
Well, I think Surya has rightly mentioned the top five, and this is how I would see them follow suit as well. And then you've got the likes of Colin Ackerman coming in, Rolof van der Merwe coming in, and with the bowling they have the likes of Logan van Beek, Paul van Meekeren. So these players really put up some performances in the T20 World Cup last year, and we saw what they did to South Africa. So like there is no doubt that they have the potential to upset a team on a given day, but given overall like the the quality that other teams possess in this format, in the ODI format, and Netherlands having not played the ODIs as well as long as the others have, I believe that the gulf is probably wider in this format between Netherlands and the other team as compared to the T20 format. So they have the players, they have a good mix, they have some experience along with youth, like in cricket that Tashan mentions, Paul van Meekeren and Bas the Reader. They have really been consistent over the past few years, and in the qualifiers as well. The very fact that they made it so far means that they have been doing things right. They have been following certain processes, and they have a unit which has it in them. It just matters on the given day if they can compete with the level of quality that other teams have. Let's see how it goes. Not very bullish on them, but would really be happy for them if they win a couple of games in the tournament. Like whenever they are playing, you would just tend to support them in that particular game. You would want, just for the sake of cricket and just for the sake of them doing well at this tournament, you would want to support them to win at least a couple of games. And of course, that can help some other teams' chances as well if some teams lose out in points. So yeah, I mean, except the game against India, you would want them to win every single one, most likely. So let's see how do they go. And the player I'm looking forward to see is Baz the leader. Like he's 20 to 23 years old. He can bat, he can bowl. And last time in the World Cup, I remember he probably a ball hit him on the face, and he was still playing the next game or in the same game itself. So that speaks loads about the kind of the rigor that he has in him to put a performance in the field. They have a decent pace attack. They have the likes of Van der Merwe with the spin, but having not followed them as much as have followed the other teams around, I can't speak much on what a particular player can bring in with regards to their plans. But looking forward to seeing them this time around for sure.
Absolutely. And, I think what Naman said also puts this comment in perspective, right? Because Netherlands have been the underdogs, and they've overcome odds of plenty, be it sponsors or the whole, getting their matches on TV, and accessibility for us fans as well has been a big challenge. So somewhere do you see, them pulling off like a couple of upsets, as Achal puts it here, just like Ireland did with England back in 2011. So Rishabh, do you see that happening in this World Cup?
We all love to support an underdog. We all, the one whom we don't give a chance, that we don't give that much of a shot, and then they all of a sudden they surprise us so spectacularly, like it was in Ireland and England. I remember that game so well. I was watching it, and we all thought England's in the bag, has this in the bag. Ireland's has 5 wickets are gone, and all of a sudden Kevin O'Brien comes up. Remember him? So and I think that game that was happened in the Chinnaswamy Stadium as well. That, that was so yeah. And these just make for such good stories, and we need such stories to light up the World Cup, because it just makes the tournament all the more endearing, and it sort of glues us more to the sport. So, but like what Navan and Bharat mentioned, the gulf and quality is a little too wide. So even when there is talent, they have a decent bowling attack, they have a really good batting attack, uh, but because I don't know. I mean, I haven't followed the Netherlands all that much. I watched bits and pieces of them during the qualifiers, but I did watch the final, and Bastille's performance was incredible. It was the way he propelled that team, the way he played was incredible. And you might think that he is probably one of the next best things that's coming out of the Netherlands. He has age on his side as well, but yeah, a lot riding over on his shoulders. Um, And but if I am very excited to see if Netherlands does pick a few victories here and there. I like maybe Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Afghanistan, maybe, or someone maybe even bigger. Who knows? So I mean, that is going to be one heck of a story when it does happen. And one interesting thing though about this Netherlands team, because they brought back people like Roelof van der Merwe and Colin Ackerman. Now they were not part of the team that was part of the qualifiers. So, and these two are pretty experienced folks. So they are keeping in mind an element of experience, like what Bharat mentioned with Van der Merwe playing in the IPL for so long. So I do think Netherlands are taking this World Cup pretty seriously. They are looking to get a win or two. Maybe that's all they'll get optimistically. But yeah, for the betterment of the game, you want more associate nations to make the cut, and it's good to see Netherlands coming back after like 10 years, more than a little bit more than 10 years now. That's great.
Right, and looking at the comment section too, I think a couple of our viewers brought in this point of how the Netherlands versus the South Africa is going to be quite an exciting encounter considering last year's T20 World Cup, right? So, Bharat, what do you think about this encounter? A lot to look forward to.
I mean, to be honest, I think as we were discussing just before the show as well, right? T20s are a bit more of a leveler because you need to be much better for a shorter period of time to actually change a game or win a game. ODIs, I think it's a tough ask for Netherlands to beat South Africa because across a span of 50 overs, South Africa just have too much quality. It's not like in a T20 game, if you need 60 from 6 overs, again, this is possible in an ODI game as well, but you need 60 from 6 overs, you can you can win a game. Netherlands can beat South Africa. They need 3-4 quick wickets. But across the span of 50 overs, it doesn't matter if you, as I said, right, you can get South Africa, let's say 30 for 3, 40 for 4. But then Klaassen comes in, then Miller comes in, then you have Janssen. So South Africa's depth and South Africa are a different type of team in ODIs. Like their pacers get the full 10 overs. Their spinners again in Indian conditions with Tabraiz Shamsi and Keshav. So I don't see Netherlands posing too much of a challenge to South Africa because far too much quality in both the batting and bowling with South Africa. What I'm looking forward to with the Netherlands team is I would say Netherlands versus yeah Netherlands versus South Africa. Sorry, I just dropped off. Yeah, Netherlands versus Bangladesh would be a fair game that I want to watch out for because Bangladesh are not coming in with a very good this thing.
Ryan Ten
Exactly.
Descarte was a South Africa origin player also, wasn't he? Yeah.
Uh, and he had
Uh,
something to do with Kolkata. I think he played with the Knight Riders, didn't he?
he played for the Knight Riders.
Right?
He won
Yeah,
the IPL with them as well. I remember very
yeah.
vividly. Yeah.
Mm.
Also, like if we look at the scheduling, they've probably picked the best venue to play South Africa and Netherlands. It's a Dharamshala. Like
Oh,
very romantic for them to be playing there. Given what
but
happened
the ball
last year at
travels.
the World Cup.
Yeah, the ball travels. Like the ball flies in Dharamshala as well. So it could be a yeah it could be tough on Netherlands as well. But
Not
it
as far as
swings a lot.
Hindustan, right? Yeah,
It swings a lot in Dharamshala, right? If I'm not wrong,
it does.
it swings
It
quite a bit.
does.
So Netherlands medium pacers might come into act there because I remember them extracting some movement uh, in the opening few overs. So maybe a fair contest. Who knows?
And this is where they might miss Klaassen a bit, like Fred Klaassen, if you remember last year in the World Cup. They might end up missing him slightly here in such conditions.
Fair enough. And, Netherlands is one team that we will all be looking out for because they're the only associate nation team at this tournament. And they certainly bring in a lot of quality as well. And here's hoping they can pull off those remarkable wins because their journey to this World Cup itself has been that of a fairy tale, right? So here's hoping we get to see some quality contests from their end. And now that we are done previewing all the teams, let's look at some other general questions that come up in this discourse. Now, when you look at this World Cup, we have 10 teams participating. But this question is open to all three of you. Do you really think that the World Cup is inclusive, in the sense when you look at the football World Cup, you have like 35 plus teams participating? And somewhere, going ahead, do you see cricket go this way as well? So you have more associate nation teams and not just the test playing nations squaring off against each other. Let's start with Naman, then Rishabh and Bharat.
Interesting that you bring up that point, Neha. I feel like to answer this question, we need to look a lot more at the economics of the sport in itself. If you look at a game of football, it goes on for 2 hours and it's done. Whereas if you talk about an ODI game of cricket, it goes on till 7 to 8 hours. So even though there might be some interest in the fans, not everybody today is up to watch an 8 hour ODI game. Even if we talk about bilaterals between teams like India and Australia, Australia and England, not everybody would be following them with the same amount of passion, and it doesn't generate enough revenue for the associations and the boards to hold these events. So looking at the overall inclusiveness of associate nations, I believe T20 is moving in that direction. Like we are seeing countries like Azerbaijan having T20 games. In some corner of the world, there's a T20 game going on every single day, and we are not even aware of how well it's going. So the game is spreading through that format. I believe as long as making cricket a global sport is considered, T20 is the way to go. And in those World Cups, also things are getting more inclusive. We are seeing qualifiers being held, and every team goes through these qualifiers to reach the World Cup itself. Like Nepal had to play the qualifiers, even back then for T20s. Also, they play these. Even if you go on any cricket app, you can see that the qualifiers are going for each zone at some point of time or the other. So it is becoming more inclusive, but the gulf again lies in the quality that these traditional nations, the Commonwealth nations who have been playing cricket over the past 50, 60 years and hundreds of years, they definitely have much more quality. So even if through these qualifiers teams do come to the World Cup, you will see that stark difference of how well one particular team is doing compared to the other. But as recently as we can see in the Asian Games itself, when Nepal was playing against Mongolia, well, like that game was just something ridiculous altogether. The way Nepal batted, like this bloke made a 15 8 balls, 9 balls. Sorry, he did 9 sixes and reached a 50. No, was it 10 balls? Like somewhere on those lines, this UV's record was broken there. 15 10 balls. So these are the things that we will see coming up. Again, like just coming back to the original question itself, through the ODIs, let's see how relevant. I would want the ODI World Cup to stay for as long as it does, because I love the format myself, being an OG cricket lover. But there are chatters around that people are looking at the format becoming redundant in itself and calling it to be called off. So let's hope that doesn't happen. But as long as it is here, let's hope teams do come in. But in the longer run, for associate nations and for other teams to come in, probably T20 is a better format, because for those countries as well to understand cricket, they would want it over a short span of time and just get to terms with it. And currently, there's so many formats. We have the Test, One Day, T20. There's the T10. There's the 100. So if cricket has to be spread on a global level, I believe everyone has to come together and be like, okay, we cannot have all these formats because they confuse people. Today, if you're explaining the game of cricket to someone for the very first time, you explain it to them in the concept of overs. Now, if all of a sudden you end up explaining 100 to them, it's a different ball game altogether. So there has to be some sort of agreement to be come into place for cricket to grow. And T20 is the way for the smaller nations, but we need tests and ODI to remain just for the entire history of the game itself. Like ODIs is what gave birth to T20. So I believe this World Cup in these 4 years should remain. Probably the bilaterals can be done away with over a period of time and being replaced by multi-nation tournaments. Like previously, if you remember, there used to be tri-series, like triangular series between countries. India would play England and Australia in triangular series, New Zealand and England in triangular series. I believe we have more of those. That will make much more interest among the viewers. Asia Cup does generate more interest than any particular bilateral series. So, like, if that's more or less what I have to say, and love if you guys would have to add your inputs on the same.
Go on, Bharat.
I think Rishabh wanted to go. His screen's frozen for some reason. Or okay. I think franchise cricket also has a major role to play if we want cricket to be more inclusive. Because if you look at football, let's say with the Premier League, you have players from everywhere. Like day before yesterday, I was watching a winger from Israel playing for Spurs. No context, but still, these are teams which might not have such strong national sides. But if great players from each team get a chance to play against the best players in the world, then you'll see a marked difference in the culture across, let's say, the country, across this thing. Because cricket is also still very dependent on cricketing heroes. Like you need someone to take that first step and go out of the way to make it big. Let's say in franchise cricket and international cricket and all of that. So that's something I'm looking forward to make cricket more inclusive. I think, as Naman said, it'll be the shorter formats where cricket gets a lot more uh, different teams from different places coming in. I think you have the Malaysias, you have the Singapores, you have the Kuwaits, the UAEs, all of Oman as well, if I recall, for some time. So you need all of these teams to come in, because cricket with just the big three right now, both from a fan point of view, interest point of view, and economics point of view, is unsustainable. India is just growing into a juggernaut, but you need more people to come into the game to make it more interesting for everyone, because eventually it has reached a point where only 2 3 bilateral series even draw any kind of interest. Let's say the India Australia's, India England's, again, test is more interesting, but let's say South Africa, India. So I think, yeah, tri series. We need to bring back the tri series, because I recall having a lot of fun. The Commonwealth tri series with India, Australia, and Sri Lanka, the OG ones. They used to be good fun with the two finals, if I recall, all of that stuff. So that would be one. And just again, World Cup, the ODI World Cup would probably not be the best space to bring in more people, because time investment is a lot, as Naman said. Because with games that can finish in 3 hours, I know T20s finish nowhere close to 3 hours as they're supposed to, but with games that can finish in 3 hours, 4 hours, you'll get more people coming in. You'll get to play. You'll get to start games at 7 p.m. and finish them off at 11 p.m., where most people can watch the entire game and understand what the game truly is. So lot of factors play into this. Uh, I think someone said the 2024 T20 World Cup will have 50 matches among 24 teams. Again, all of this also depends on how much cricket these associate nations get to play against the more experienced teams. Because in the end, it shouldn't become like an echo chamber. You have 10 teams that play against each other at very high skill level, and the rest 10 just play against each other without having that opportunity to leapfrog in skill level or resources or equipment or whatever it is. So I'm looking forward to a lot of associate members playing full member teams in the future, because that is the only way associate teams they'll at least need a reference point, right? This is the skill gap between us and them. They'll need to know what to bridge. So these are some of the questions that ICC needs to answer. So yeah, I'm looking forward to how things will pan out going forward.
And Rishabh, you can share your thoughts as well.
Yeah, sorry about that. I think I had a tech issue somewhere around there. Anyway, so I think when it comes to this, if you recall, I think like what Naman and Bharat rightly mentioned, if you're going to have to spread the game more and in a way that is somewhat equitable, it will be the shorter format. What I will say though, it is through this shorter format that some teams can get this kind of exposure, and then they can level themselves up and become better to the extent that they can become a team that plays more 50 over games or even test matches. Case in point, Afghanistan. They started off, we first came across them. I came across them when they played the T20 World Cup. I believe when it was back in the Caribbean, and when it was hosted back there. And now look at them. Now they have become a bit of a mainstays. They're a full member. They're a full member nation. They have given the so-called experienced member nations more than a run for their money. Their players have made significant impacts across the world, more so with franchise cricket. So I think Afghanistan is a very good example of how you can use the shorter format of the game and then you can integrate them into the longer formats. And not just that, you can make them. They can be an incredibly good. They can become a very good team in the process. So so that is one. That's a one very good example. Um, but for when it comes to 50 over cricket and having more associate nations, it's always nice to have more associate nations playing in the tournament. But what the what Naman and Bharat mentioned, the span of the game, 7 8 hours, and a lot of times these associate nations don't even play the 50 over game that much. So it's mostly revolving around 20 overs or even 10 overs nowadays. So it will it so I think the way to go is with T20 cricket to spread it as much as you can. Hopefully it becomes an Olympic sport, um, so in which might again spread the game even further, uh, and because we truly need to make the sport even more global than it is. There's always this talk about how cricket is such an exclusionary sport where you don't have more than say 15 nations who play at the top level and the rest are more or less playing catch up. That's I think it's always better to have more and more countries, but there's also questions of scheduling. If you're going to have more and more countries playing, being a part of being full member nations, how many games do you play along with these people? Where is there an off season? That needs to be considered as well. So these are difficult questions, but I think by and large we would always want more nations to be part of the game, more nations to be a part of these World Cups, break through the barrier, and rise to the ranks. Case in point, Afghanistan.
Absolutely, and I hope going ahead also we get to see a lot more teams participating in the World Cups, especially if it's starting off with the T20 World Cups, nothing like it. But eventually, even in the ODI World Cup, maybe have a bigger calendar schedule for that. But I think that's where even this comment comes into perspective of how you have so many T10 leagues that have come up, and that occupies a big space in the cricketing calendar as well. So how will ICC contend with these boards coming up with their own franchising leagues, or prioritizing the ICC events will be quite interesting to see. And moving on to the other major point is the weather concern, right? Now, we saw how during the warm ups, a couple of games were just washed off. And this is kind of like the peak season for rain in India. So, how do you think the scheduling was done? Like, what was the mindset behind the scheduling? And are you guys concerned we might have a few washed out encounters, or the DLS method coming into play in a couple of these matches? Again, we'll have Naman, Bharat, and Rishabh go.
About the scheduling and the rain, I believe it might have some concerns in the southern part in venues like probably Trivandrum. Trivandrum doesn't have any main games going ahead. Bangalore, we always have the rain concern. So, and even in Mumbai to an extent, we might have these concerns. But if we move towards the north in places like Delhi, Lucknow, even these regions might not have that concern a lot. But the regions who are in the south and much near to the coast, they might have the retreating monsoon making a difference there. More or less, I don't think it to affect a number of games. Probably right now it is having a difference, but in the as the tournament progresses, I don't see a lot of games getting washed out. But if and when it does, hard luck to the team who loses out on a point on those points. And yeah, probably you may never know. Maybe Australia's games against Netherlands or Afghanistan get washed out and they lose out on 2 points over there. So it can have that kind of a difference in any team's chances moving ahead. But don't see it becoming a major factor, because in a place like Sri Lanka, you would expect more monsoon around this time of the year. In India and around the coastal and the southern regions, but if the central regions are considered, I don't see a lot of impact being played by the rain. And if it does, it is really going to test the infrastructure in stadiums, and probably that becomes an eye opener for the board to ensure that at least the major venues have uh, good infrastructure to tackle the rain problem, because Bangalore they have the sub air system which really makes the water go away very quickly. But then there are other grounds which do not have that. So this is one point that I actually believe, that at least all the IPL hosting venues must have proper infrastructure to deal with the rain, because they have these 7 or 8 games going on every year at their venue. So investing the money into these systems makes sense for them. And if they do have these systems in place, then in cases of major events, they get an edge above the others when it comes to getting the matches. So it's, yeah, like Achal mentions, no more irons and hair dryers, please. It's a reference to 2020 in Guwahati. I remember when Sri Lanka was about to play T20, but it was washed out and they were trying to dry the surface using irons and hair dryers. So let's hope that doesn't remain the case throughout. And again, just cutting it short here, these systems can be put in place at least in the IPL venues to make cricket not get missed out due to rain.
I think the India-Australia series also saw the preceding the World Cup also saw quite a few players being affected by heat. Now it's not just the rain that the players have to worry about in India; it's the high humidity and heat in coastal regions. So definitely, let's say somewhere in Mumbai where humidity is very high. Let's say or Delhi. I don't know how the weather in Delhi is because it can be either quite chilly or very hot or dry heat. Now, how do you deal with that? So varied temperature conditions is something a lot of teams will not be used to within the same country, but they'll experience it this time. With rains, I think the less said about the scheduling part of BCCI's capabilities, the better. With how they have handled things over the last few years, but again, Naman makes a great point with infrastructure. Like uh, you cannot say that you're going to host a world tournament and we have to put us on. Okay, yeah, you cannot say you're going to host a world class tournament and not have the infrastructure to host it. Like I think it was very recently that BCCI set aside a budget for all the grounds to have a small revamp for the World Cup, all the grounds that are going to host the World Cup. And this is a stopgap measure. We'll go back to the same system once the World Cup is done. The next time an event comes up, again the same thing is recycled. So BCCI needs to be a not just BCCI. I think the state cricket associations also need to step up their game a little bit. I think the warm-up game against England was washed out in Guwahati itself. I don't think that's because of the drainage system because it just rained throughout the game time, if I recall. So, but rain will be a bit of a concern. But I think going into October, mid-October, we won't have games washed out due to rain or significantly rain-affected games. Hopefully, yeah. Fingers crossed. Again, you never know. Especially in Bangalore, you never know because I just checked the weather. The next month is supposed to be clear, apparently. But yeah, I will not trust as long as the game is over. So, questions about that and how does yeah, these are the major questions around the weather because how well not just the pitches or the uh, ground itself, but the stadium itself, right? Like, what is the audience experience? Because if I recall, uh, the IPL final in the newly constructed Ahmedabad Stadium, we saw what was the situation on the first day when it rained and the game moved to the reserve day, if I'm not wrong, for that. So you have an entire world of fans paying through their noses. Again, ticket scheduling, something we won't speak because I'll be in trouble if I do. But you have fans who have gone through so much, who stand in queues, who middle of the night they buy tickets, they spend 10,000 in Ahmedabad. They're booking hospital beds to stay because hotels are booked out and stuff like that for the India Pakistan game. So the least you can give them is a good experience in the stadium. So hopefully these are things we take into consideration going forward. But BCCI is BCCI. Let's see what happens. Yeah.
It's such a thing because with the weather you can never truly predict. And like what Bharat said about Bangalore, it might say that it's clear for the rest of the week or the month, but even today, you never know. But you just always get caught out. But I think the weather concern is a thing. Generally, these World Cup events they are usually held during the summer, so so these months of October, November are slightly unusual. I think someone commented that this is something to do with the Indian Premier League scheduling. I don't know, but yeah, slightly unusual time to host a World Cup. you kind of wish that you don't get to experience these things. Bharat raised a very good point about the heat, because I remember one time New Zealand was playing India. It was a test match, and this was a while back. And Neil Wagner said that during that one day of play, he lost a couple of kilos while playing. So this, so the heat plays a role. Definitely does play a role. And for some folks who are not acclimatized to weather conditions, it will impact them in ways that they won't be expecting it. So that will definitely be a part of their plans. It ought to be really. Um, as for the organizing bit of the sport, I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of the build up to this year's World Cup has been a bit subdued, because of the issues regarding security, regarding tickets, regarding just treatment of fans, ticket paying fans, and I I think there is a lot of scope for improvement on that, because in terms of organizational capabilities, who takes up the mantle on, on on distributing tickets, ensuring that there are no issues whilst doing so. I think it because and I feel like BCCI's handling of this has not been up to the mark in my and I think it need because all of us are. Why is it that it's only recently that you have all these state boards and telling us that we don't have the requisite security requirements to host games of these sorts? Why is it coming up now? And why is it that it's a sort these things should be dealt with way before. I mean, it should not be coming up at least a month before the damn thing is about to begin. So it is a big question mark, and it's one of the reasons why us fans have been a little bit dismayed almost with the way how things have handled. Anyway, it's going to start in this coming week. Let's hope it goes without a hitch. If and if it rains, hard luck to those teams. If Duckworth plays a role, even more so. But yeah, this is. I think after the World Cup is over, they need to do a forensics of this and see how things have gone badly wrong, and ensure that whenever we organize an event like this, or whether it's the Indian Premier League or any other series that we have, that these things don't resurface, because it's not a good look for us, not at all.
Just one thing to
Absolutely.
add regarding the ticketing part here. I think it's not just restricted to BCCI altogether. Even with the IPL, like things have been observed as recently as this year when uh, IPL returned to the stadiums after 3-4 long years. Like my own experience with like trying to get a ticket for an RCB game at Chinnaswamy, like for there was no clarity regarding on which counters the tickets are supposed to be sold, and the prices were extremely high for this particular venue as compared to the others. So I believe to an extent it is getting to a place where the fandom is being taken for granted, and boards, associations, and even franchises feel that no matter how high you charge, people are going to end up paying and they'll mint the money. So there has to be some balance has to be struck in that regard, that okay, you can charge a good amount of money, but then are you making the stadium experience really inclusive for everybody to come in and watch the sport? Because there's one thing that post COVID we've seen, theaters were not minting as much money as they used to with regards to cinema. So you would not want a day to come wherein people just stop giving up on going to stadiums to watch the sport if the experience is not good enough, if they're not feeling that it's the value for money. So this is where, in the longer run, I believe boards, associations, and franchises need to come to a place where the overall experience for fans, right from purchasing a ticket to entering a stadium and your infrastructure, like the basics, like even the washrooms are not the way they should be in at an international venue. And this is where you are this is where you're representing the entire country at a world stage. So if people are coming in from abroad to watch a game of sport and they are not satisfied with the basic necessities in terms of infrastructure, it doesn't give out a good image of the country overall. So, and especially given the way India has been growing in the world stage of late, like hosting the G20 recently. So let's like not getting too much into the international aspects, but it's just sad as a fan who would love to go to the stadium to watch a game of the World Cup and not being able to get your hands on tickets, and then seeing them being sold at 10 times, 20 times, 30 times the selling price on in the black market. So it's disheartening to say the least.
Definitely, I think this has been a nagging concern, and a lot of fans have brought this up to on social media. You see this all around on Twitter as well. Tagging BCCI, Jaisha, and everyone. Yet, action has not been taken. So let's see how this World Cup goes. And through our discussion, we have reviewed all the teams, looking at so many facets as well. So now I think this is the last question. So who are your top four? Let's have quick predictions from everyone. Your top four. Let's start with Naman, then Bharat and Rishabh.
All right. India and England definitely. I believe they are far too good sides to not make it to the semis. India and England definitely are there. The next two spots, I believe, can be taken up by Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, and even Pakistan. I believe these four, but at the moment, given their current form, the balance of the squad, how things are shaping up, I believe South Africa and Australia have a slight edge above these. But I wouldn't be surprised if Pakistan and New Zealand end up making. I would be rooting for Pakistan to make it and hope for an India Pakistan final. But on current form, given the recent scenarios, given the entire structure, on paper, India, England, Australia, and South Africa would be my picks.
I'm lucky. I don't have to put too much thought into this. Exactly what Naman said. I'm not even kidding because it's India, England, definitely. Australia also, I believe, are a shoe in because they have the quality and they have the pace attack as well. Uh, but the fourth spot, South Africa, like they they are unassuming this time because you this is not the same South Africa with the AB de Villiers or the Faf du Plessis, Hashim Amlas, or a very pedigreed lineup that you say they have to make it to the semifinals, or else anything else will be a disappointment. This is a South African team that has come off the back of very middling performances. They've peaked at the right time, and they have a squad that is built to suit. Like given the situations, given certain situations of a match, they have all types of players who can play the role that is necessary. So I think this is a South African team that can go quite far. I think I go with the. I can't. I'll never predict what Pakistan will do because it's pointless to think about it because you only know once the uh, situation comes about where Pakistan are headed. New Zealand again. I think South Africa will pip them to the final four. Is how I feel about things. But yeah, India, England, Australia, and South Africa will be my final four.
Yeah, by and large, that's it. I mean, I think India, England, and Australia, they almost kind of select themselves. They given given the caliber and the quality of these teams, given the experience of the players in these teams, experience in Indian conditions, that too, which also really helps them get over the edge. It'll be the fourth spot that will be up for grabs, and that's where, like Naman and Bharat mentioned, you have the like you have New Zealand, South Africa, and Pakistan. They will be vying for this, and I think, given on current momentum and given the kind of form that South Africa are in, they will make that spot. But then again, cannot count out the likes of New Zealand. Can definitely not count out Pakistan as well. But yeah, for now, going with India, Australia, England, and South Africa. These are my top four as well.
Fair enough. And let's quickly address this question on our screen as well. Srijan asked if any of the Asian sides have a chance to, sneak in. You have Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and Afghanistan, who obviously boast of a good repertoire of spinners as well, right? So, quick predictions, guys. Again, let's go with Naman, Bharat, and Rishabh.
Yeah, I'll just answer that. But Neha, what are your picks?
So,
You're
mine,
in
thank you for
Cyprus.
asking that. Yeah, so I think my picks would definitely be India, England, Australia, and my fourth would probably be a square off between New Zealand and South Africa. So yeah, I think this looks more likely.
All right, makes sense. So about these Asian nations, like we have discussed briefly, like while discussing about these teams. First of all, the gulf in quality between the three, four teams that we are predicting to make it, and these teams is slightly wide, and they are facing some challenges of their own. Like with Sri Lanka, you you don't know which side is turning up on a day. There's not enough consistency that you can observe in them across 9 games of a league to be very bullish on their chances for such a tournament. And they are missing out some key players as well over there. And they're still not sure what their best 11 looks like. And that is not because of the good reasons that you have too many good players to pick from, but because of other reasons you're not confident in who is suited for which position. And with Bangladesh as well, like there's some internal turmoil going on in there, but even they are not, their team is also not well structured, that who bats where. And they are like the players have not probably had as many number of games as they should have had. Like you see the likes of Liton Das probably taking rest in a few games and giving up captaincy so that they can focus on their batting. So these are not great signs of a cohesive unit who's coming into a tournament with some great confidence. So these are some issues with them. And Afghanistan, obviously, like these three teams have quality spinners, but can they bat well against quality spin and pace? That is a major concern for them. And with Afghanistan, the batting, it's like if you leave out the top two, the middle order really struggles. So these are the reasons why, like, they can cause a few upsets for sure, but sneaking into the top four, given these like the 6 teams that we just discussed about, I feel that the quality is farly too different. I would be surprised if they make it to the top four, either of these three. I'd be really surprised. Like they would have the players would have played the cricket of their lives to make that happen, in my opinion.
I think building on what Naman said, my major issue is all of these teams are very dependent on if tracks are spin friendly. You take sprint friendliness out of the track, you give them a flat track. They are, I think Bangladesh still have the best shout out of all the three teams on a flat track because they have Liton, they have players who can take advantage of that flat track. But again, these are very condition specific teams. And unlike, let's say, the previous World Cups or in my memory, none of these teams have been consistently good enough. Like I can tell you that if you give, I think Sri Lanka have done pretty well in their last 15 ODI innings, but again, those include qualifiers against associate member nations and stuff like that. Any of these three teams, and even Pakistan for that matter, against quality sides, you give a stretch of 6, 7 ODIs, you don't know their form. They could win the first 3, 4 and then lose the next 4. I know even Australia have gone through that, but recently. But I don't see these teams being consistently good enough, even on spin-friendly tracks. Because apart from Afghanistan, I don't think the other two have bowling attacks or spin attacks that you cannot play. Because Afghanistan, you can say that if Rashid Khan gets on a roll, or let's say Noor Ahmed gets on a roll, Rashid Khan is unplayable sometimes. But I don't see either of the other two bowling attacks having those kind of days regularly enough for them to come close to top 4. Again, they have too many deficiencies in that sense because all of the three sides are batting light-ish. Again, Bangladesh have the best of the lot in that sense, I feel, uh, especially with Shakib. But yeah, that will be one of the concerns. And the thing is, the top 4 that we picked, I don't know what kind of playing 11 India will go in with, but all of the top 4 bat quite deep, and they bat quality quite deep. So again, I think we've moved on from the days where you could get a team. I keep saying you could get a team for 40 for 4, and you thought the game was done. Like, yeah, these guys gonna make it to 210, 220 because England, we saw you take 5 wickets for 100, and then you have Livingston and Moeen Ali, like or Livingston, Sam Curran, whoever it is. So you can't rule these teams out of the game. And the problem with Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, or Afghanistan is that there are specific weak points you can target and say, if you do this, there's 90% of the chances these guys will lose the game. So that is one quality that the more experienced or the teams that we fancy, I feel, have, that there's not a situation where you can say these teams are out of it and they have nothing left in the tank. So that, I think, will, especially in a tournament scenario, that will hold them in good stead, because definitely Bangladesh and Sri Lanka and Afghanistan will cause quite a few scares. They'll have phases in a game where they'll pick a few wickets, they'll stitch 100-run partnership, but let's say Charita Salanka gets out, who's coming in next? Is Shanaka coming in next? Okay. What form is Shanaka in? How well has he played in the last few years? Or same with Bangladesh or Afghanistan, as Naman said. You get the openers out. Who's coming in next? What's at what pace are going they're going to play? So these are smaller questions that will eventually lead up to them losing out on quite a few moments in a game, which could decide their fate in the tournament. Is how I see it.
I mean, I think based out of the three sides that were mentioned, I think it's I would say it's Afghanistan who have the better shot of having some success in the tournament, because I believe in terms of their in terms of their spin attack, Afghanistan it's a lot better than Sri Lanka and what Bangladesh have, or even what Pakistan have. That being said, it is just that, and there are definitive weak points in Afghanistan, especially to do with their middle order, as Naman mentioned. Then in terms of in Sri Lanka, whereas and Bangladesh, where the quality is compared to the other teams just falls really short. The form of some of their key players is a question. So there are definitive weak spots in these teams. So if it's hard to see how any of them can make it to the top four. Um, I would be very happy if Afghanistan makes top four, because it's one of those teams I am kind of slightly rooting for, because of the kind of journey they've had, their cricketing journey that they've had. That being, but it's an unlikely scenario at this stage.
Fair enough. And now, we have almost reached the 2 hour mark on our live stream, and we still have such amazing comments coming through. I think Naman had a point before we wrap up. Go on, Naman.
Yeah, I was just looking at what Srijan said, and I agree with what he mentions that if they don't face any challenges against the pace or the spin, but for that to happen, like I mentioned during when we were discussing Afghanistan, the likes of Nabi and Rashid really have to bat high, in my opinion. Like Nabi is perfectly capable of batting at 5 and Rashid at 6, but probably they slot down because they are not confident. Probably they're not confident in the guys at 3, 4, 5. If they can really give the finishing flurry that's needed, and they probably slot there to give those death overs, slam bam attack. So yeah, I mean they can on any given day they have the potential to even score more than 300, but the quality in the pace attacks and the spin attacks in the oppositions, I don't think the batting can quite match to that level. If they have to do good, the openers really have to get going, and then the the experienced blokes need to come in.
Rightly said. And as we, reach the end of our discussion as well, I think Chinmay's point really puts everything together, because this is a World Cup where we see really competitive teams, and almost I think 8 out of 10 teams are definitely going to, stake their claim to be in the knockouts because of how quality their sides are. And considering we have also previewed all the teams, looking at almost all the pointers so comprehensively, thanks to some amazing points brought in by our viewers as well. I think we've brought in a really interesting conversation. And on that note, I'd like to draw curtains on our discussion. And I think I say this on behalf of our panelists as well. I would like to thank all our viewers for joining in, putting in their lovely comments, and for sitting through this 2 hour marathon preview. Honestly, I didn't realize it was 2 hours till I actually saw the red there. So, yeah, I think we'll wrap up our discussion, and thank you everyone for joining in. Cheers.
Thanks, Neha. Cheers.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.
Appreciate this.